Welcome to a bonus episode of the Deep and Durable Learning Podcast. I think you'll be intrigued by these bonus episodes, which center on the Summer Institute in Teaching Science, also known as SITS, which I founded back in 2003 and which I continue to direct to the present. SITS is devoted to faculty and curriculum development. Nearly all the faculty of the Division of Natural Science at Bob Jones University have been through this intensive, one-of-a-kind program, which requires 4 10-week summers to complete. In these bonus episodes, we'll take a look at what has made SITS so transformational, both for our faculty and our curriculum. Well, I have today a guest who's a colleague in the Department of Biology at Bob Jones University. Dr. Amy Tuck has joined us for an interview to talk about a course that she teaches to biology majors called Immunology, which obviously is the study of the immune system, specifically the human immune system. So welcome to the podcast, Amy.
Thank you.
And part of the purpose of talking with Amy is so that you can see some of the principles of learning that we have talked about in previous seasons of this podcast, see them implemented in a practical way in a course. So let me just jump to a practical question first. How would you define the practical value of your course? Why should a student take your course who's majoring in biology?
This course is usually, the students who take it are typically biology students or pre-med students who both of them tend to be interested in either the medical profession or going into biological research or an area that helps them to understand the body better. Basically, it's giving a more in-depth view of a specific system within the body. So in anatomy and physiology, you cover all of the different systems in the body, but this is taking just one, the immune system, and just expanding it out to get a better idea of how all of the pieces fit together. Because in reality, the immune system touches all of the other systems. And so it's not one that's typically delved into in many other courses. So it's a topic that is touched very lightly in a couple of courses, but this allows the students to really get into the underlying concepts of the immune response in the body. For biology majors, it could affect them studying cancer research, vaccines. For doctors, they don't get a huge amount in even the medical education that they get once they go to graduate school. So this helps them to go in with a better understanding so that they can apply it while they're learning all the other systems in medical school.
So you mentioned its dependence upon some other courses that would have taken that might have briefly touched on the topic. So how do those other courses prepare them for this course? What are you anticipating they're coming with that will make this course work better for them?
Most of the students will have taken anatomy and physiology, or if they're pre-med, they'll have taken physiology and anatomy, which is giving them all of the systems of the body. So it's like this big, broad overview. So when they talk about the immune system, it is giving them what are the cells that are involved in the immune response. And it's giving them, these are the organs that are involved in the immune response. But it's not delving into what are the layers of the immune response and how do these cells actually interact and talk to each other in order to protect the body. The fact that we have layers, you have the innate immune response, you have the adaptive immune response, and a lot of times that class doesn't get into that depth of understanding. So it prepares them by showing them these are the cells and the organs, so we don't have to go that basic, but we can build on that framework that's already been established in physiology and anatomy, and then move forward with deeper understanding. Microbiology tends to be another one that students have taken, which is very, very, very helpful, because that's they're the balance to each other. The reason you need an immune response is because of the pathogens that are trying to get in, and your body is actually trying to basically protect itself, defend itself from these pathogens. So by having microbiology, you see how the bacteria, viruses, fungi are trying to attack, and now we kind of show you, okay, God has given you something to protect yourself. How do they interact together? So those are the two main courses that really contribute to their understanding once they get into immunology.
Yeah, and you're emphasizing now understanding as opposed to accumulating a store of information. So a typical way of dealing with teaching courses on a variety of levels, including university level, is like these are themes we're going to talk about. But I think your course is based on answering some questions rather than, quote unquote, covering some themes.
Yes, when I was looking for a textbook for this class, the majority of immunology textbooks are geared towards grad school. You don't have many that are at a lower level. So a lot of them are an encyclopedia of new terms that just become very overwhelming. Just one example, they're cytokines that are produced by the different cells. You have hundreds of them.
Can you define a cytokine for us?
A chemical signal.
Okay.
And so, or even receptors on the cell, they have just multiple types of receptors. And in other professors that I've talked to, they say, well, I have them memorize these list of receptors and these cytokines and what they do. But to me, it's more important to look at what questions can we answer and how can we use those individual facts to put together a story so that they make sense. And it's better for your understanding, but also better for remembering what is actually happening in the immune response.
So we're not just talking about a preference that you have in terms of how your course is structured. Do you think you're implementing something that is in tune with the way people learn in an optimal manner?
I think people learn better with stories is what I have come to the conclusion. In that you have to give them examples that they can relate to, and then kind of put together, like I will tell my students, I can literally give you a final exam that starts from day one of what we're doing until the end of the semester, because the immune response is literally a story that starts from the contact with the pathogen to how does your body eliminate it or die. And so it's all just one big story, and one thing is leading to the next that is interacting with something else. And so we're just breaking up the semester into those different pieces of the story and trying to get them to integrate those pieces so that it does become something in their mind that they can think through, oh wait, I know this piece, and that definitely leads here in this story, and so they can put that big picture together of the immune response.
Yeah, I think narrative is probably a missing piece from most people's instructional approach. We've all been subjected, might be the right word, to teachers who like to tell stories that were not particularly relevant to the subject, but also meant we were probably not accountable for the story as a student.
No, you just
so you
kind
can
of sit back and
you go
listen.
on, tell your story, and we'll humor you. We'll smile, laugh at the right places, whatever the appropriate reaction is. But that's not what you're talking about. You're really tapping into. It's been observed by neuroscientists. There are a couple things that the brain is hardwired for. One is language, and so it's very unusual for a 2-year-old not to very quickly develop this massive vocabulary and evident underlying understanding of how to communicate just based on being immersed in hearing other people using language. But one of the other things that neuroscientists now agree we're hardwired for is stories. And so in that sense, we're used to a story that has unexpected twists and turns, that has moments where I don't see how this is going to resolve, and then hopefully a satisfying conclusion at the end. So it is possible, not artificially, but actually logically, to tie into our native desire to hear stories conclude in a positive way.
Well, and you can use the stories too, like they already know this story, and you can connect it to something new, so they automatically get the bigger picture of what this is doing. For instance, everybody knows from history and elementary school and everything that Paul Revere had a very specific role in alerting everyone that the enemy was coming, and they needed to get up and respond to that. They needed to go fight. So when I tell them that the dendritic cell is the Paul Revere of the immune system, they automatically connect that to, oh, they're going to tell somebody there's somebody coming and we need to defend ourselves. So that is the cell that goes from the innate immune response and activates the more intense adaptive immune response with antibodies and killer T cells. And it has a very, by adding that story in there, they automatically can think of, oh, I know what that cell does. And so it kind of links to something they already know. Even though it's not biology, it's still showing the principle.
Yeah. So there are patterns in some of the stories that we tell. Mm-hmm. And analogies are a very powerful way to tap into existing understanding, to quickly move to understanding of how that works out in another arena. It sounds like that's what you're doing. Can you tell us a question or two that are drivers for your course that you would say students should be able to not just recite information about this topic, but actually reason within a structure that provides a satisfying answer to a question?
Well, one of the things is, like when I was talking about earlier, that the immune response is a set of layers, that it's not just an all or nothing response. So I like them to, we answer the question, when your outer barrier level is breached, how does the innate immune response,
outer barrier being like skin,
your skin,
for instance,
yes, is breached, what's the first response? And that's the innate immune response. So you have the understanding that, okay, I have a first level of response, so asking that question. But then further on, when that innate immunity is overwhelmed, how does the adaptive response take over? So you have a first level question that's answered in the first part of the semester, where we just talk about, what are the first defenders and what happens when they can't do it. And then that, because that's going to happen, so then they already have in their mind the next question. So that question leads to the one, well, what happens when it doesn't work? And so you can kind of build the questions that they're actually asking it before you bring that question up. And so one of the things in SITS that I like to, or I've kind of based my course development on is that you remember things better when you're answering a question, when you actually have a reason to listen to or to try and figure out this information because you have this question that you are trying to answer, that you want to really get the understanding of. And so all of my courses that I teach, I try to look for what question is this going to help them answer rather than just giving the information.
Yeah, and at least for students who've contextualized what you're teaching about, the questions become compelling. Like it's not an artificial way to develop the course. Like you indicated a moment ago, like they're kind of anticipating the next question. Well, if that's true, then what about? And your course is actually leading to answering that question, which keeps them engaged, among other things, but gives them a level of satisfaction that's helpful for learning and points them toward, but just like a story that's got interesting twists and turns in it, the story's not over yet. There's not a simplistic kind of answer to this. It's much more complicated than you would think, and it needs to be much more complicated. So it's not devilish detail. It's really there are satisfying turns in the story that tell us, but if it were as simple as we've made it out to be to this point, then fill in the blank, some undesirable endpoint.
Well, and that's part of what they come in with in physiology and anatomy. They have a week that they cover the immune system, and it's just a very nice little packaged story of the immune system, whereas now we take that 1 week, or say in histology I teach the entire immune system in 1 day. I now take it and expand it into an entire semester, and that's just the first half of the textbook. It literally could go on for an entire second semester, but obviously there's not time to do that. But the complexity is just incredible, and they get a little overwhelmed. And when they're reading the textbook, and some of the comments I've gotten is that this class tends to pull out the big ideas from the chapter so that when they go back to the textbook, it makes more sense. They know what ideas they're supposed to be linking together, and then the supporting details become the facts that help them put the picture together.
So that kind of segues into another question, which would be, on what basis did you choose your textbook, and what role does your textbook play in your course?
I actually chose the textbook because it was not that, how do you say, like I was saying, most immunology textbooks are for graduate school level, and there's so much detailed information on all of the pathways and all of the things that are activated that you just get lost in all of those little bitty pieces. This textbook pulled back a little bit more, and even though there are a lot of details there, it did give a big picture idea of the story of the immune response, and I liked that perspective. So it gives me the ability to kind of point to, these are the big ideas, and you don't need to know all of these details, but these are the ones that add to the story so that you can get that bigger idea. And then when you go to grad school for immunology, which I always tell them is such an incredible area to research, that it would be wonderful for them to do that.
And that's your area, right?
Mine was actually a combination of immunology and microbiology.
Okay.
And so, but it's such a growing area that, like, I have a new edition of the immunology textbook this year, and it's one of the few textbooks that I get that I have to change specific things within the class because new information has been learned. Histology has been the same every year I've taught it for 15 years.
Study of tissues.
The study of tissues. Same tissues, same things are happening. But immunology, they are learning so much so quickly that the textbook just changes each time you get a new edition, which is unusual. And so encouraging them to with this textbook to get the bigger ideas and then support it with the details. I think it's strength.
So you're talking about really paradigm-changing ideas that necessitate a change in the logical structure of the course, as opposed to hot topics that put immunology in the news or whatever. Mm-hmm. Those might be interesting. Those might give some currency to the course. But you're talking about a field that's really, in a definite sense, still in its infancy, without making any deprecating intent about it. But so there's still regularly discoveries that change our whole perspective about how the system works.
I mean, even from the time I was in grad school, the main thing that they emphasized in my courses there was the adaptive immune response. And when I started teaching this course 7-8 years ago, I was shocked at how much the innate, the one that's already there, how much they had learned and how essential they have realized that it became, and it, is just expanded the knowledge within the medical field. And within just how the body works, responding to different pathogens and things like that. So it's just incredible to see how the research has developed.
So what role do facts play in your course?
I think they are actually where the concepts and the big picture idea give you the main story that's going along. The facts are going to support the concepts that you're telling. So it's, you can tell a nice big overview generalized story, but unless you have the facts to support it, then you're not going to get the complete picture. So I like to say that you kind of have a combination. You have certain things that you have to know in order to develop those concepts in that bigger picture, and that together it gives you the whole idea and understanding.
So when we talk about knowing facts, in a real sense, facts are the products of somebody else's thinking. So how does a student in your course get to a point where they're not just competent encyclopedias, but they actually demonstrate that they know what those facts are claiming?
Well, I mean, a fact is you have to, B cells produce antibodies. But the understanding level comes in how the B cells are activated by certain pathogens, not all pathogens, and then they produce very specific antibodies to that pathogen. And so it's looking at, yes, it's a fact the body produces these cells, but the bigger picture is, what is the role of these cells within the immune response, and how is it responding to those foreign pathogens that are coming in? So it's being able to use the facts within, within the story to get the bigger idea of what's happening. And you're not just listing, okay, there's B cells, there's T cells, there's macrophages, but you're able to think through, okay, these actually have to interact together to get the immune system to work effectively.
Okay, so those are pieces of the narrative, mm-hmm. and I know what they contribute to the progress of the narrative. Mm-hmm. What did you take into account when you designed the course? It wasn't as simple as finding a textbook that had a narrative, I suspect.
Well, I needed to take into account where the information that they had coming into the class. So recognizing that some of them would have physiology and anatomy, some of them would have bacteriology, but not all of them. And so I would have to take into account what basis of understanding or what I could build on when I designed the course. So like my first chapter is, I talk about the history of immunology. And within the history of immunology, you're actually talking about microbiology, because it's the same group of people who discovered microbes were the ones that were working with immunology as well, and how those two sciences actually developed together. And so you can kind of pull together those pieces, and we talk about within that first chapter just a big overview of the body. And so you have to take into account where the students are coming from, try to get them all to the same point when you're designing that class, so that you can all move forward in the same, hopefully, level of understanding, and not leave anybody questioning what's going on.
Yeah, and again, it might be helpful to underscore for those who are listening, we're not talking about you've been exposed to information before in these courses, but you've actually assimilated some ideas that are the basis for which the building process this semester is going to start with your comprehension of those ideas. And if your comprehension is flawed, then you're compromising your ability to learn this semester. So we've got a context that's going to go deeper.
Yes. Yeah, this course tends to be one that is built on other ones they've taken. It's not more of one where it's leading to another class. This one tends to be one that's more of a capstone kind of course, where it's more specific in one particular area.
The practical value of the course, do you think it changes the way students live? Do you think they maybe become somebody who has something to say about decisions that they or their peers face?
Well, I think it gives them a better understanding in many areas. If you're thinking in terms of, for instance, somebody is going into cancer treatment, they would have a better understanding of, what the doctor is trying to do with the immune response to help that person fight off the cancer. Or if you are discussing vaccines, you have a better understanding of why the vaccine is actually going to prepare your body to fight off the pathogen before you even face it. So it's allowing them to have an understanding of issues that they may face in the real world, so that they can really make better decisions about the things that they are interacting with.
So you find they do this just kind of intuitively, or do they bring questions to class that they want to talk about? How does that work?
Sometimes they bring questions to class. I've even, I've had somebody whose mom has an autoimmune disease. And so we can kind of talk about how a failing in the immune system is why an autoimmune disease can develop. And so how the treatments for that are going to affect literally their whole life, because it's affecting the way your body can respond to pathogens. I typically tend to bring up, when I'm talking about the immune response, secondary response is when I bring up vaccines, because the whole point or the whole principle of your immune system is that when you face a pathogen the first time, your body prepares memory cells so that the next time they see it, they attack faster and they have better equipment to fight it off. So you may still interact with that pathogen, but it's not going to be as bad, and you are going to recover sooner.
This is what you called adaptive immunity a while ago.
Yes.
That I'm preparing a line of defense that I didn't have innately, but I now am confronted with a pathogen, and I'm going to adjust, and I'm going to create a strategy that's going to hopefully allow me to fight this thing off.
Right. And it's just exciting to see that each time your immune system interacts with that specific pathogen, they teach the immune system to be better and better and better. So you have a faster response, you have a more specific response every time you interact with that one specific pathogen. And so it's just incredibly designed. Every chapter that we go through in this textbook or in this semester, we just see design. That God created such an incredible system to be able to protect us.
So what's the feedback from students like?
I mostly have positive feedback from this class because so many of them, even when you think back to learning about the body through elementary school, through high school, your biology class, the one system that teachers tend to go, that's kind of complicated, I don't really feel like talking about it, is the immune system. And so in general, people don't have a very good idea of how their immune system works. And so as we're walking through the semester and looking at these pieces, just interacting together to protect us, students are amazed. They're just, they're like, wow, that how these cells are developed, how they maintain the ability to protect us even after they have worked, or how they have eliminated the pathogen. They're just amazed. They like the way that I tend to take the detail, messy stuff of the book and pull out the concepts so that they can get that big idea. They like the stories, the Paul Revere stories of the class. I've worked several years on trying to, find the specific examples that will stick in their minds and try and help them to remember. And I think we have some good ones. I had a student in class raise their hand and I get it. That example that just clarified exactly what, I can see it happening because of that example. And so they tend to have very good reviews with this class. They enjoy it. They enjoy learning the little pieces that bring out the whole story.
So in the Summer Institute of Teaching Science SITs, we often say that telling is not teaching. And it sounds like you're not just telling students, but how would you characterize how you're approaching your role as teacher and their role as learner?
To me, it has to be kind of a mixture of things because there is so much new information that they haven't heard that I tend to give chunks or pieces, and then we kind of stop and step back and think about it and okay, what are the consequences of having this type of response in the body? One of the really big ideas for the entire immune system is recognition and response. Whether you're talking about the innate immune response or adaptive, it has to recognize non-self, and then there has to be a response. Getting them to think through those consequences of things, and you cover a piece of information and you discuss it, and then you ask them, okay, what does it mean if the immune system doesn't work in this spot? Okay, we just talked about this whole sequence of the dendritic cell has to go to the adaptive immune response and say, we need help. Well, what happens if there's a mutation and that dendritic cell can't tell them? What does that look like in the body? Mm-hmm. And then you sit there and you let them think about it, and they're all like, oh, the body can't respond. And so you have a very small group of people that have that type of mutation that you actually don't get the adaptive immune response, and you have a very
short lifespan.
Yes. Yes, you do. Those people do not live very long.
Right.
And there's pieces like that all through every topic we talk about. I'm like, okay, what if this doesn't work? What's that going to look like in your immune response? What are you not going to be able to do and what are you not going to be able to recognize. And so it kind of keeps them thinking critically about the information that they're pulling in. And so one of my favorite projects that I've developed in all of my classes is the poster project that they do. Is I introduce it the very first day of class and tell them that they are going to become the immunology experts, and they are going to choose a topic where the immune system doesn't work. And so it's either a type of cancer, an autoimmune disease, a pathogen that tends to be one of the bad ones. And then they have the semester to research it. And I have them answering specific questions like, what does the disease look like in the body? From an immunologist point of view, what is happening to either cause the disease or allow it to happen? So they're looking for the failings in the immune response. And then I have them look at, okay, what kind of treatments are normally used? How is that using the immune response to actually help with eliminating it, or is it inhibiting the immune response in the case of an autoimmune disease? So it forces them to think through immunologically this specific instance, and they become the expert there. And I have them actually do a full-size poster, and on the last day of class we go around and each person presents their poster to the class. And so we've had students do HIV, we've had students do cancer, different types of cancer, breast cancer, we've had them do bubonic plague and why that works, because your immune system should be eliminating it, but people die. So what is the failing in the immune response there? They just choose topics kind of all over the place. It's new every semester. And so I really feel like they are being able to take the things that they have learned through the semester and apply it to that very specific situation to be able to explain to me what they know about the immune response and why it is happening the way it is. It's a very good project. They enjoy it.
Well, thanks for being with us today, Dr. Tuck. And sounds like your passion comes through to your students and to us today. Maybe you have some envious listeners who wish they could be in your course. If so, you've accomplished your objective. Thank you for being with us today.
Thank you for allowing me to be here.
If you're interested in learning more about the work of the Summer Institute in Teaching Science, please go to my website, deepandDurable.com. That's deep, A-N-D, durable.com for more details. Deep and Durable Learning is supported by the Science and Engineering Endowment Fund. Please consider a monetary gift to the Science and Engineering Endowment Fund to allow us to continue to produce the resources that are most helpful to you. You can give through a link at deepandDurable.com.